say. All right, so here we go. We're gonna just start out with your lights, and so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a nice big wash on the face itself, and I'm just gonna go in right away, put on all the background of the, other than the eyes, nose, and mouth. I'll put a little bit of the shadowing in, but not to the point where it's gonna be done, I don't think. Well, we're gonna see, because I'm gonna see if I can't get some of that done right away as you go along. All right, so we're just gonna wet this here. And I can wet into the hair because the hair is going to be darker, so you can go a little bit farther, and I'm just going to do it evenly. If you wanted to put in things like masking fluid for the highlights, excuse me, you can do that. But I'm going to stay away from the teeth because I want the teeth to be white, so I will stay away from the teeth. And I don't want any of the flesh tones to get into the teeth, so I'm going to leave that. You can also, again, put masking fluid there. But that's big enough where I can go around that. And again, down here for the flesh tones. So I'm starting with the flesh tones again because it is the biggest areas. And so first, and to make a flesh tone, I usually use this part of my palette, the pinks and the oranges and yellows, and I probably should have cleaned out the top of it just slightly because a lot of times the top of my palette has a little bit of the colors mixed in from before. No big deal though. People tend to think that, wow, it's so dirty, you're never going to get a clean edge, but you will. All I'm going to do is take my paper towel, go like this right into those colors, and I'm going to pick up just the little dirty colors that were on top of that. It's just a tint. It's a very small tint of color on top of your pure color that's underneath that. So again, I'm going to go with more of a pink and an orange, kind of a salmon-y color. I'm going to go in here, and I was always taught in school that the forehead is usually more of the yellows. Yellowish tint of flesh tone, and then as you go down to the cheeks you get more pinks in the cheeks, and so we'll do that and put a little bit up there too. And I noticed that the front of her nose is going to be a little bit darker, lighter I should say, lighter. And then her cheek right here is going to be a little bit lighter. And I'm kind of working fast enough so that I can let this all float. I want my pigment floating. Oh, I just said I was not going to put anything in there. I want to get the white of the paper right there. And so I'll get a little bit more pink in here. And so underneath her cheek, right here, be a little bit lighter. Any parts where it's light, I'm going to try to keep it white for now. Or keep it pretty light. I can put a little thing over it and then just take it out. So there's a little bit of a swish of color in that area. Underneath her eyes, she doesn't have bags, but there are a lot of times the bottom of the eye throws a little reflection or shadow, not a reflection, but a shadow underneath there because the sun is coming from the top. So anything that's underneath will get a shadow. So that'd be a little bit more shadow in like underneath her eye here, though her eyebrow a lot of times will not. It'll be sticking out a little bit more. But overall, I just want to get the big areas of light and dark. So let me put a little shadow in there. And remember, again, a little bit more pinkish in the cheeks right here. And there's a little bit of a darkness right here where the cheek changes directions. And I'm going to try to always make all those directions to be more of a soft edge. And so what does that mean? It means I have to do it with a wet into wet wash. The eyes, nose, and mouth will come later to how I actually do those. I'm going to put on my glasses really quickly so I can see a little bit more like where I am putting these things. So I'm going to go in here with a little bit of the side of the nose. I'm going to put a little bit dark in there. And remember, try to make it go just slightly darker than you want it, like 20% darker, so that it shifts by itself, because when it dries, it shifts about 20% lighter. And I'm just going to go in here, put that in there, go down the side of her face right here, a little bit on her nose. And then underneath her nose will be a little dark. And again, I've got pretty much pigment in my brush. I kind of take away the water, put the front side, turn it over, pull away the water, and then actually sculpt it. Sculpt it with the shadows. And you can put other colors besides these. I can put in a little bit of violet too in that to dull it down a little bit. And because there's going to be a little bit of that reflecting. And actually there's going to be blue because the blue on her shirt and the darks will be part of that in the shadow. So don't be afraid of putting some of that in there too. Some of the purple or blue into the shadows. So I can just put a little bit of blue in there. It'll gray it up, but that's okay. You know, you're going to gray it up a little bit so that it reflects. That's what would happen in nature, that the blue will be a little bit darker, and it'll make it a little bit darker right here, and not so vibrant a color. And so I'm basically sculpting her away with soft edges, trying to do soft edges as much as possible to keep it soft edge. And I want it to look nice and smooth and soft. And so I'm going to make sure that the water is what's going to smooth things out, right? So you got to make sure that you keep the water going, keep it nice and wet to your painting. Let's see, underneath her nose is a little shadowing in here. And the thing about this is that you got to really kind of work quickly so that you can get all those, or like I'm doing right now, I'm applying a little bit more water into the surface so I can get a little bit more time here. This is pretty much going to have to be done. I have to wait for that to dry. Otherwise, if I don't, I'll get watermarks. And that's the thing I definitely don't want in my picture is watermarks. So here I'm going to put a little shadow in there. Here this is still wet, and I re-wet it, and now I'm going to put it right into the blue, because the light blue, it'll have shadow there, and that'll be fine. Underneath her mouth is a little bit. I'm going to leave her lip alone, and I'll do that later with a little bit darker and lipstick kind of colors. Go down here. There's a little bit, oh boy, that's getting a little dry. I got to make sure I can just kind of wish that in there. Oh boy, that's a little too dry. Let's see if I can't get her little dimple right there. It's got a little dimple. And then down here a little bit darker. And now the neck usually is a lot darker, so I'm going to take a little bit of the blue, a little bit of the orange and pink that I was using, and yellow, and make the neck a little bit darker. It can actually be a lot darker in some spots so that you can, again, let's get some more of this purple and blue. Purple and blue in there will make it a little bit darker. And there's even almost like a slight line, but it's a soft edge line to show the difference between the bottom of the neck and the chin. And then down here, you can just make it nice and dark. And actually the hair's gonna be darker than that, so that'll be fine. I wish I wouldn't have gone back in there. It's going to dry a little bit. So again, I'm sorry that it does take, it's one of those things where if you don't get it right in the first time, let it dry, and because I can go back over it again. Once it's dry, I can put a little wash over it and get it again if I don't feel like that exactly where I need it. Like right in the nose, I need a little bit more there, but I can't do it now. Again, I gotta let it dry now, and just I'll wet it again later. And so let me just go down here and get the look of the neck, and then make it a little bit lighter down here again by her chest. And so we'll lighten it up again because the light is hitting. The light is not hitting underneath the hair, but it is hitting. It is hitting on the shadows underneath the neck, and it's not. The light is hitting the front of her chest. All right, and so now I'm going to put a little bit of color since I'll let that dry. Again, I can't do anything when it's not totally evenly wet. If I go into an area that's damp, I lose a soft edge and it doesn't look right. And so in that fashion. So let's do some parts of it now that, like I noticed her hair is kind of yellowish and tannish up here, blonde. And so what I'll do is I will put a little bit of yellow, a little bit of light tan. And so what I use yellow and a little bit of dirtiness that I have on my palette, which is like the lavender with the yellow will make kind of like a yellow ochre. I don't actually have any yellow ochre in my palette, and I'll leave some of it white to this hair. And so what I'm going to do is just get the light parts of the hair first. I'm not going to go in here, otherwise I'm going to get that looking too dark, and it's going to be a watermark right there. So I'm just getting the light parts of the hair right now, whisking them out, and over here I'll negative paint the background so that it's a little bit darker than the hair. And so right now we're just worrying about the hair, the actual object of the hair, not behind it, just the light parts of this hair. Here we have a little bit of the hair coming this way. All right, and so while that's happening, I see that we have a little bit of light through here. So why don't we just right away go into our darks? And so she has brownish type hair. to make a brown, I use lavender and orange, and that usually makes a really nice purple and orange, making a great brown. And so it's going to go in here and I'm going to follow the lines I have on my paper already. And I notice that I'm going to leave that to be very fuzzy up there, so wet in the wet. And I kind of want to get the darks all dark right away. I don't want to get them later. Like I want to pick up whatever I'm going to get now, not later. So a little bit of purple and this yellow. And that makes it brown too. Purple and yellow make a nice brown. See that? Look at that. If she has more of a reddish part to her hair, then I would just put a little bit of red in that too. But it doesn't. It looks like in photograph. But then again, you know, you just choose what you feel like you have in your paper, or in your and what you feel that your color scheme is going to be. And so I'm going to make this more yellow than red. So a little bit more yellow, a little more purple. There we go. And then do the lighter parts first. Try to get the lighter parts first, and then the dark on top of that. And so I'm smushing that in kind of into the scalp here. And I'm going to put darker parts in there. And you notice I don't do everything, wet everything. I call this wetting as I go along. I'm wetting my paper as I go along. And so here, I have the light parts, and I'm just going to put some of the dark parts in there. And this is okay actually to have a little bit more where it's going to be soft edge. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little water right here. And if I get a little bit of this dampness, it'll be okay. It'll look like where her hair stops and starts. And so my brush, I'm dried it off, and I'm going to just soften that edge right there. And where the hair meets the scalp, you can keep that soft edged. And I can even put a little bit of dark right there, because it just feels a little dark right in that one spot where here's gonna be a little bit darker underneath. Work it slow, you know, get it going with the lights to the dark of the hair. Basically, this whole side is going to be your lighter side of the hair, but when I want the darker parts of the hair, I'm going to go with a little bit thicker. I'm going to put this underneath. And I can also put little hair lines, like these are going to be soft because it is wet, and that's what I want. Put around that, and still stuff is floating. I'll go down here. And then I'll do individual hairs later. And if there's individual hairs, you do that on a dry. And then when I do her ear, it'll be a little bit darker right there. But I'm going to go around the ear right now because the ear itself is lighter. Now over here I got to watch it that I get some of this to a point where I'm going to put the dark underneath here. So I got to make sure I get most of my lights already done. Get some of those lines in there also over here, because I notice that this part is a little bit darker in the back here. Because it flops over her hair right here, and from dark to a light. And there's a bunch of lines that go that way too. And so I'm going kind of over my pencil lines I have drawn there, and I'm trying to go into the middle of them. And I can put a few hard edge ones in there later anyways too. So right now I'm just getting the basics, bigger parts. And don't be afraid of putting other colors besides what you see. Like I know a lot of us will just use one color, but I'm going to put a little violet in there, or even blue again, because blue will be be reflecting. These colors reflect, even in hair. Hair a lot of times is shiny. And to make it look shiny, you can put in other colors besides just the color of the actual hair. You always got to remember reflected colors. They're always going to be around if you have let's say I have a blue background or something. It's going to be kind of a darker blue, so put a little bit of that in there. And it doesn't have to just float it in there, and it's going to make it look kind of gray, but that's okay, because once you get that blue in there, it'll look very natural that is a little bit darker and it has some of that blue color into it. So here, later on, I'll make that a little bit darker. All right, so see how I'm going to leave that alone? Now I'm going to get this part done here with this hair. So come in here, and the lights are already there, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet it a little bit beyond where I'm going so that I have the nice floatiness to it. Floatiness, I'm not sure if that's the best word, floatiness. So we'll go in here like this. Now I'm not going to do the little strands of hair. I'll do that as I get to them. I'm just going to wet this close to them. And that'll be the coat, or the shirt and the coat. So now I'll come in here with a nice dark brown in here. Again, this is our darkest area, so there I use purple. Use a little bit of yellow in the purple. And if you don't get quite as dark as you see in the photo, that's fine too. A lot of times we tend to get too dark, especially on something like this where we want to keep it nice and soft and almost pastel-like and soft-edged. Soft edge is a good thing, you know, especially on a woman's face like this, a little young girl's face. It's nice to have it look more soft, you know, and a little pastel-like. Here I'm putting a little bit more of the yellowish for the blondness in her. And see, this hair right here could be hard edged, but I'm going to make it soft. Soft. I'm going with and I follow the line of the hair. The hair is coming down in this way, so I follow it. I always follow how it's coming down here, so that way when it dries, it'll have that look of actual hair. And then without having to put in actual little lines of stuff, you know, I can do that in a second. It'll be soft, and now I'm going to use my round brush to get more of the darks in there. Again, I'm using purple. Can you guys see that? I'm using more of a purple, yellow, and then we're going to make it thick. Purple, maybe even a little bit of black in that purple, just to make it nice and dark. And it's dark right here, right? I mean, it's dark. Again, it's kind of a hard edge. So let's see, we got this, and we got a couple of these going like over, and see how I'm putting little hairs. It's gonna usually blend away because it is wet, but if you can get some of it to stay a little bit here and there, that's great. And then you don't want to do every individual hair, which I know some people like to do. They like to show every hair in there and almost be photographic. I'm doing this more as a, what do you say, a impressionistic painting, where you do impression of hair. You don't have to do every single thing that you see there. So here I'm just going to whip this out like there and have little hairs from the brush. And that's what the great thing about a brush like this, it already has hair, so you just flick the brush and it'll give it a look of hair, because you're drawing hair with hair. It's kind of... Alright, and then as this goes to a light area, and then there's a little dark that comes out right here. Right underneath here is a little bit darker, so it kind of comes down there. It's almost like Chinese brush painting, where it's almost like calligraphy. I go from a thick to a thin, and I'm trying to follow the line of the hair. It's so important to follow the line of the hair. That's where it'll look like it's going, and it'll read as hair. You know, I mean, what's on our brains are good enough to know that this is hair on top of this lady's head. And so just as long as you get it, you know, to look pretty close to that, you'll be fine. Now let's do this hair, and I'm going to wet it first with my bigger round brush. So I'm just going to wet it, and so I'm going to have soft edges in here, but I want a hard edge along her face. And I could make some parts of it softer on her face. Like down here by the chin, I can go into the chin a little bit, but at first I'm just going to wet it all evenly, and then I'm going to get the darks and the lights, actually light to dark like always, and I'll start with that. And so here I'm wetting it. Now it's evenly wet. Now I'll start forming the hair on this side. So let's go in here right now, and we're just going to kind of come down. It's pretty dark in here, but it looks like there's a lot of orange in this area, or yellow. So it's like a little bit orangey yellow. Right there, it's like shining through the hair, makes it look shiny. And go down, and it's very important to get the shape of her face. And so that's the drawing part of it. That's where you had the drawing, and make sure the drawing is good, so that you know exactly by putting that line there of dark that the contrast, it'll look like her. That's how come I traced it, so that it would get exactly looking like her. And I guess it is cheating, but sometimes you have to do the cheating. It's okay. I know how to draw, but to me, it's like, why not just, I don't want to spend the time. I don't have the time to draw it and spend hours drawing and make it perfect when I can just make it look like her if I'm copying the photograph exactly like I'm supposed to do her right there, then I might as well just copy it. Though if it was a portrait of a lady who was actually sitting there, that's a whole different story. You know, you sit there and draw it. And a lot of times also too, if you're free-handed, you get a little personality of your ability at painting. Kind of sets it into the painting. So a lot of times when you see portraits by Sargent and stuff, a lot of them have that same kind of look because like their hands will have the same look because they tend to do the same type of thing for like the hands, and they have almost a style how they do a nose, and like, you can tell it's like a Sargent nose. You know, even though it's each person's nose is a little bit different, but you kind of tend to do a certain kind of way when you do a portrait and you're free-handed. So now I'm just putting a little bit of the yellow, light yellow here, put a little white in my yellow, and just wisp it off to the side here. All right, and I think it's pretty much dark enough there. And it's nice and soft edge. I don't have to show everything again. But I noticed that even underneath here, it was dark. So let's just go dark there, and right away go from this dark right into the shirt. And so we'll take our bigger brush and go right into the dark blue. I'll put a blue. First I'll go with the gray, because right down almost to here to her neck is going to be dark. Let that bleed, that's okay. This is going to be a dark blue, so that can just bleed into there. I'll just take like a dark blue, let it fade into a dark blue. And then I'm going to take a light blue. Actually, it's a light blue top on, so I might as well just use a light blue. Ooh, I almost spattered on here. Oh boy, that would have been not so good. I'm going to use more of a turquoise. I think a turquoise would be more fun than like a light blue. I'm not a big light blue fan either. Light blue. It's not one of my favorite colors, but turquoise is pretty nice. I'm sorry about that. Didn't shut off my phone, even in the time I'm painting and demonstrating. Okay, so we're gonna go a little bit darker here. Nice dark blue jacket. And then right here, put this down. Okay, nice and soft here, nice and soft and dark. It has some folds. Here's her arm there. And now we're going to take this around and make it a nice turquoise blue. Bring it around to this side. Again, I just chose turquoise because I think her eyes are blue, and so we can do a little of that in there. And now force it back up to her face, which would be really cool. And over here it goes a little bit dark, and then it goes back to a nice dark over here too. So we're gonna pull this right into the side of her hair and just let it float right in there. Make this nice and blue, make it nice and dark. And little shadows of the hair onto whatever that is, the shirt or the sweater or whatever she has on. Make this really dark. Just beat it off to the edge of the paper. Take a little bit of this brownish yellow. Well, that's going to make a green. We don't want that right offhand. So we're going to go in there again with a purplish brown. So that brown, purple and yellow, remember? We'll make a nice brown. So I'm just going to bleed that in there. That's going to be probably a little bit of green because I'm mixing that yellow, has a little bit, and the blue will make the green, but that's okay. It'll reflect that way. So if a lady's hair is blonde and you have blue background, some of it will look green because of the fact that green and blue, blue and yellow make green. All right. Let's see what we have. A little bit darker right here. All right, so that's going to be that part of her shirt and her sweater. Now let's do the background right away. Let's get our background done. So the background is going to be. I shouldn't go with those same colors, wouldn't I? I never thought about this. So there's a little bit of yellow and orange back there, which will be good because It's like her forehead. I'm gonna put a little bit of that. I'm gonna start with that. Clean this out a little bit here, so I don't dampen my brush with, or dirty up my brush with the yellow. She has yellow on her forehead, and the yellowish orange will be what I'll do the background in. So the orange, a little bit of yellow. Be right here. And that'll be nice because it'll match right into her hair over here. And then we can still go into the blue up there too. We can still take this into like a nice turquoise. Turquoise is blue and yellow, you know, so that'll be great. A little turquoise up here too. And let that bleed in. Should I do a little orange there? Orange instead of going right straight from the blue to a, instead of a straight blue to a yellow, put an orange in there and it'll blend together nicely. So same thing on this side. I'm gonna start out with a blue and then bleed it into an orange and then to the yellow. So orange right to this yellow. Nice and simple, keep it simple. You don't need the background to be anything super spectacular. It's going to be all about the face. In the end, it's about the face that we want to make it look really nice and look just like the young lady that she is. So there we have just a nice little bit of a background. And so some of this, again, remember we put the blue in the hair a little bit, so that all worked out. Down here, we're going to make it nice and just, oh, I guess we're going to make it orange. So we're going to paint around some of this hair. And give it the look of, you know, just like it's lit up from the side here a little bit. And then straight down with some of the orangey yellow. That would be good there too. Now the most important part of the whole picture is the features, and that's the part that you gotta work a little bit more time on and look at it and just make sure that you get it looking really nice. And so I'm gonna use my smaller brushes for that because I want to make it look. Now I'm thinking again, should I go over the facial features just to get the more of a darker? I don't think I will because I don't want to ruin it. Actually, just dry though. Let me show you how you do that. You can spray it. I can't spray over there, so let me just take a brush. Just take a bigger brush. Take clean water. And so the clean water, I'm going to make sure my brush is nice and clean. I'm going to take, oh boy, let's see. Like I said, I was going to go over again, so let me just show you how to do that. So if you don't get it the first time, then you can learn how to get it. So you're going to take your water, and I'm going to do it in an area where it's not going to affect very much because I'm just going to put it across here real lightly, really lightly. And so my brush is barely touching the paper. And so, and again, there's no pigment in here, just pure water. And I'm going down, and it's going to loosen up some of the paints, but that's okay. It's going to loosen up in the perfect areas, and it's going to leave it the way it is. And then it allows me to go back in and get some more pigment into those areas, maybe a little bit darker. There's a puddle here on her chin, and just make sure there's no puddle. I'm looking from the side to make sure I can tell the difference between how much water is on there and how much pigment I'm picking up. And so a lot of times it will pick up a little bit if you agitate it too much, but now it's all ready to go back in. It's all evenly wet, and so now I'm just going to go in with a pretty big amount of pigment. See, I didn't get enough pigment the first time with a nice dark pigment, so this time I'm going to try to go a little bit darker, get a little bit of violet in there, and get a little bit more pigment because I didn't have enough pigment in my first wash to make a difference between where it's going to stop and start the actual. So here in the ear, I'm just going to make the whole ear actually a little bit darker. Come down here, and you notice I'm just putting in pigment. Lots of pigment. So I covered up the ear. Then we go up here again, and you can just keep on, and now it's again like the first wash. It's basically my first wash, and I'm just going to go over and see if I can't get a little bit more to where I think it's going to be a little bit more like the value that the shadows are throwing. I don't want it to be too an image like where it goes from a light to a dark. I don't want it to be abrupt, but I do want it to be where it goes from a light to a dark, and it's dark enough to show that there is a difference between light and dark. I don't think it showed that in the beginning here, so I'm going to just do that again and say I'm rubbing out. And if your brush is the same wetness as the paper, then you're just pushing pigment around. See, make sure you don't have too much water in your brush, because that then will come into the water will go in there and make an effect on the paper and give you a watermark. And now I can do a little bit darker in her eyes. Let's go a little bit darker here. Maybe a little dark. I'm going to use a little blue in there just to dull it down a little bit. So like I said, here in her eyes, it's a little bit darker. I don't like using that big brush for something like that that's more delicate like this. And so I'll go in here with a little bit darker. And then her nose. Remember, her nose is a little bit farther. The shadow parts are a little bit farther and a little bit more direct right here. And it goes out a little bit farther than I had shown the first time. Ooh, I didn't wet the nose, that part of the nose. Let's get some more wetness in the nose over here. I did not wet that part of the nose, so watch out for that. I didn't wet that, and so underneath here is going to be a little bit darker. Spend good time here. Don't rush this part. This is what is the most important part of the picture, is the look of this person's face. So spend the time and get in there and get it right. Don't think it's okay, that's good enough. No, get exactly what you want, and you can do that by just, it's all wet again, so I have not enough time, as long as I just use pigment and put pure pigment down. Again, around her cheek here, it was a little bit darker. I didn't get it the first time, so a little bit more warmth in this area right here. And I know sometimes that looks really dark, but you just wait. Watch until you see how far down it will go in value once it dries, and so that it won't look as dark as it does right now. And actually, I'm just going to pull this into her cheek a little bit more. And take the paint out, or take the water out of your brush, and just use pure pigment, because again, my paper is wet. So I have plenty of time to go in and just shape the head. And this will be all come smooth, because it maybe doesn't look smooth right now because it's wet and you're seeing a little bit of the brushwork. But as soon as it starts drying, you're going to see how much it does all of a sudden just dries up to a really beautiful soft edges. A bit of violet in here again, got some hair, nice and soft right here. Again, where chin meets the face. I don't want it too hard edged. Keep that dark. And look at her front of her thing here. It's like a puddle right here, and so what it did, it went into the blue here on the bottom, and so it's forcing itself up. So though the bottom of her chin and the bottom of her lips is a little bit darker, so again, go in there, put a little blue in there, a little lavender, a little darker underneath there. And again, I'm going to try to get her little, what do you call that, dimple, a little dimple right there. Smush, I like to call it smush. Smush some of the paint into the wetness, and it's almost like you're oil painting, because you're taking enough paint and there's not that much water, so I'm kind of smearing it into that area, and it's still going to soften itself because it is still wet in the wet. And that's a little bit too dark right there, but I'll lighten it up. Hold on, I'll lighten it up with a little bit of pink. And can also pull a little bit of the pigment out of there. Just keep on working it until you feel it's what you want. More of the lavender, not lavender, but the more of the purple. On this side, let's see what we got here. We got, goes up to her there. Let's get the inside of her ear nice and dark. Nice and dark on the inside of her ear. And actually, there's a little bit of light part there too, so get a little bit of that in there too, so it doesn't look all the same. So it's not just one black hole there. It's just again, we get the hairs going across. A little darker right here. Just a little bit darker underneath her eyes again. I didn't get that quite dark enough. It's very hard to get it to dark enough the first time, but you can always go a second time if you don't get it the first time. People tend to think you can't. You're stuck with that first wash, but you can. Just be careful and make it easy on yourself by wetting it, and then real lightly go in there and get things to look like they are. Here the side of her nose is nice and dark, and this is all dry, so I'm going to get hard edges. But I'm going to show you how to wet it while you go along, or soften it while you go along. I'm going to put it down here, and then I'm going to take my brush and just soften the edge with a little bit of water, and it kind of comes down by the mouth here, and then it does get a little bit darker through here. And this part is softened by just taking a damp brush and just soften it. So it looks kind of strange now, and a lot of times you got to watch out that you think, oh my gosh, look at how terrible that looks with some of the things, but you got to wait until you get to the point where you're going to see the eyes, nose, and mouth. Once I get those drawn in, then suddenly it becomes, like what she looks like. But right now it doesn't, because I don't have those things in there yet. I don't have the features in there yet. This is a nice little dark right here by her nose. And then basically I'd be putting like makeup on her. I'd be putting lipstick on her, eyeshadow, and eyebrow stuff, whatever the eyebrow stuff is. All right, so I think it's dry enough now to do that. And so let's go. I'm going to start out with my small brush, my small round. And I'll start out with the eyebrows. Oops, sorry for hitting this table. And so we're going to go in here with a nice dark color. Sorry about that again. Who's calling me this time of day? I'm going to go in here and just do the eyebrows. It kind of starts here. I'm not going to make them super, super black. I make them kind of brownish also. Kind of to match the hair. And then, and not too contrasty. Otherwise, it's going to look like she's evil. Especially when I soften it up and just make it look like it's going on the side here. And we don't want to make it look evil, right? So that's a little purplish color, because it's going to pick up a little bit of the colors around it. I'm going to make it soft edge right here. Going to come in here. And you can even draw them in with your pencil when you're doing it with the pencil. You can draw a little bit of them in real lightly, so you know how light you got to go with it and how soft edge you got to go with it. And so that's simple like that. And then maybe underneath her nose right here, make it a little bit darker right where the nostril goes in, and then inside her, right where inside of her mouth, not the teeth, but inside her mouth. Don't draw the lines between the teeth, because that just makes it look weird. It makes it look too thick. So you just do little notches for the teeth. It's enough to show where each tooth is if you do the notch. I know a lot of times you don't want to have a pure white, but hey, on a woman's face and even on a guy's face, it's nice to have white teeth. You can buy all kinds of stuff to whiten your teeth, and so here I can make it a little bit lighter than that, than it is. And so now I'm going to take my rigger brush, and I'm going to put some lipstick on her, and I'm going to do it softly. I'm going to do it very softly here, try to make it just where I barely, I'm going to take red. I'm not going to make it so bright up here, especially because it's the upper lip, and so it's going to be a little bit darker the upper lip. And some people like to do it where it's soft edge in some parts of the lip. You can do that too. I know it's like I usually do that if I don't know the person, or it doesn't have to be so perfect. Like this person has to be perfect because this is going to somebody who I want to look just like that lady. But if you're doing some parts where I'm not so scared of making sure that it looks exactly like the person, I will make it a little bit looser a painting, and in that respect, then I can be a little bit more crazy with the brush work, but not for this. I don't want to do that on this one. I want to make it pretty close to what I see, so that it just definitely looks like this lady, this young woman. There's a little bit dark on her. It all depends. I mean, it's tough if don't try to learn how to do portraits from people that you know and you have to make it look like them. Just worry first about trying to make it just like a person in general, because it's hard enough and it's pretty hard to do. And so, a lot of times, if it's a person you want to make it look exactly like, then and also get the character of the person and stuff, that's later. First, work your magic with the brush and see if you can't get the soft edges going and stuff like that before you start thinking about making sure you get exactly looking like that person. A little red in the gums here. Put a little red by the eyes here, since I have the red in my brush. Now when I do the lipstick, it all depends on how pink you want the lips to be or how red you want them to be. I don't want to make them super red lipstick. I just want to make it kind of pinkish red. And so I'm going to go in here. And we're just going to let that bleed into the background here so that we don't, again, the more you can have bleeding, the better it is to get the look of soft edges, and then nothing has to be identified to perfection. I'm gonna paint in the highlights on her lips by just doing little dots and lines. And so I don't want to make it super glossy, so it makes it look like she has super amount of what do you call it, lipstick on, but just enough to make it look like she has pink lips, which most of you all have pink lips. But I don't want to have her like super cherry red lipstick on either. And then a little bit darker on the bottom part here because that's curling under. So a little bit darker brown here on the bottom, and that can go right into the darks of the shadow underneath her lip, which it looks like it's missing a little bit again. But I'll let that dry before I put that part in again. Like that little dark right there. I'll wait for that until later. A little bit darker here again. All right. Next will be the eyes. But see how nice her teeth are right now? It's just, you don't have to do every line in the teeth. You know the main, here's the canine, and here. Put little dots there. Just enough to show what the bottom of her teeth look like. And also the gum line, you can make that red. And her upper lips can be red again, a little bit darker. Because it's part lips and part, and I can put a shadow on the teeth later, but let it dry, and I can even put a few shadows on the teeth just to make it look like there's shadow on the teeth. Otherwise, they stick out a little bit too far, and we don't want that either. So let's see, we're going to go now into putting a few little details in here. I just had my brush, so I thought I was going to put it. All right, let's put some eyeliner on her. And actually, first I'm going to put the color of her eyes in first because it's the lightest part. So the highlight is on the upper left here. And so that means the lower left of the blue will be the lightest. So upper left where the highlight is, then lower right would be where the most of the light color of the eye will be, because it's going through the lens. And then the upper part's the lid. I can take the little dark blue and put on the top parts, because the top part, and actually I can go right over into the pupil because the pupil will be black. And so the top parts of the eye, because we're being shadowed. Same thing over here. I'll do the dark. Actually do the lights first. So I'm just taking light blue, putting that as their eye, and leaving the highlight. You know, I put the highlight in later too with a white paint. And then right now they stick out really sorely because they're just blue and there's no dark, like you don't see her eyelashes. So it looks like she's like like on drugs right now. But that's not the case. We're going to put the black in there, and we're going to put the black pupils in there too. And so I just don't want to put it in now, because if I put it in now, it'll just bleed. So let's start out with the line underneath her lid first, which will be black, kind of blackish here. And because you can't see underneath it, what you're going to see is her eyelashes. So you're going to make her eyelashes thick, and you can't see individual eyelashes either. So you're seeing like a bunch of eyelashes together, and you don't see them all like one by one. You just see a bunch of them, and it covers over the eye a little bit, and it goes around this side here. The ones in the bottom can be a little bit more where you can see parts of them. But again, you're not doing such detail that you're seeing every single thing of things. You don't see the exact hair of each thing. You see them all put together. Now her eye, her pupil can be, and if you make the pupil a little bit bigger than the color, or not so small, they look nicer. It tends to be, if you put this little black spot for the pupil, it makes people look mean, or like they're really staring at you, and it just doesn't give that nice warm look to the person. Again, a little dark right here, and then your little eyelashes. Maybe she's got long eyelashes going over this way. And you put a lot of dark here to make it look like the long eyelashes this way and downwards. And then back up again. So again, I'm not doing individual eyelashes. I'm just doing them together. You can see here and there are some that look like they're individual, but and if I look close on her, let me just pull this up real quick, and then see what I'm going to do is pull this up and just see how her eye looks compared. And so I have too much white in this eye, so I'm going to make it a little bit more dark. Because the whites of the eyes are usually not white. They're maybe like a gray, a dark gray. And so I'm going to put a little gray in her eye right here. It should be lighter than the eyeball, or the color parts of the eyes, but it shouldn't be so light as white. You know, a lot of times you guys leave the eyes of the white of the eyes white, and that's not guide then. So take away the light. They don't need them to look super white, just enough to show that they are whites of the eyes. They're lighter than anything in the eye, but they're not white. They're usually not white. And so she has pretty thick lower lids, not lids, but eyelashes down here. Nice big eyelashes. Maybe I went too far out on this one. And then color blue of her eyes a little bit darker, and her blue comes down a little bit farther here. So a little bit of dark blue may come down a little bit farther here. Actually looking this way. Same on this side. I'm just going to make it a little bit darker. Okay, that part should have been light, shouldn't it? Yes, it should have been light right here. I keep on playing with it until I get it right, until I make it look good, and then you can move on. And this is detail. I mean, when it comes to detail, slow down and make it look right. Here, the bottom of her eye, there's hardly any white at all. And so I'm just going to make this like a little bit darker. You don't need to see any light there at all. And then this side. You can make an eye look wet by putting, see, this is all too light down here. And it comes down pretty far down right here. Well, and I'm gonna have to step back from her a little bit. Let me just look at this from a distance. Sorry guys, I gotta look at it from a distance to make sure I get it right. Okay, so we have to do a little bit more covering of the eye, and there's not so much of a highlight right here. And it goes down farther. I'll make sure that both eyes kind of has the same feeling to it, so that each eye doesn't look like it's a separate eye from somebody else. So I'm just going to try to make them look very close to the same. I can't go the same because one is left, one is the right, but I can make it to where I feel like it looks like it's the same look of the eye, like the same shape, and then the same colors. So make this part a little bit lighter, and just work until you feel it's right. I mean, this is the important part. I'm gonna look really close up on her again. Let's make this real big. I just went for a second. I want to make this really big and just see how, like her one tooth, I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller. This one right here, and so I'm gonna just take some red, and this tooth right here is a little bit smaller here than I had made it. And things like that, I want them to look like this person, so I am going to make this one a little bit smaller too, and there's a little bit more of an opening right between this tooth and that tooth. And these are the type of things that will make it look like the person that it is. And then there is shadow back here, and so I'm going to take a warm shadow. I'm not going to make a cool shadow, because a cool shadow will make it look dirty. I'm taking a warm shadow. And I'm going to put that over this tooth and over here a little bit on the top of her gums here. Again, if you make it a shadow that's cool, it tends to make it look dirty, like she has dirty teeth. So if you make it look warm, it tends to feel like, okay, yeah, no, she's got white teeth, but that's a shadow. So keep your shadows warm and clean. And like, you don't have to put them. I'm going to put a little bit on the top here, just so that it softens the edge. All right. It's dark enough. A little bit more here for the. All right. I'm going to soften the edges too, but so that not everything's so hard edged. Softening it is just makes it look so nice when you just have it soft. All right, let's get this big picture out of the way so I can see it again from a distance type of thing. So let's put this back over here. And let's take a look. So this little spot right here is a little bit too dark and a little bit too, like she has a dent right there. So I will soften that. Push that into there. Then this got a little bit dark right there. So let me show you how to take care of that. Like I said before, you can always go back in and agitate with just pure water, to put pure water over this area. And then by putting pure water over it, and actually try to make sure it's clean water, and then you can real lightly kind of agitate what's underneath, and then let that sit on the top and then fall back into place. And it will do nothing except, agitate the wash itself, go back down and lay the pigment flat again. And then this seems to be too harsh, so I'm going to soften the edge of the top of her lip. I like to have the top of the lip a little bit softer. It doesn't have to be also crisp. Same thing with here, got a little bit of too much of a brushwork. So I'm just going to lay color over top of this area. So what I'm doing is wetting it. And if you wet it again with clean water, lightly like I did the first, remember I did the second time, I just put water over this. You can do it a third time. I'm just going to lay water on top of it and then agitate a little bit where I wanted it a little bit lighter. And then I'm going to put pigment on there to again get the color I want and let the pigment do its work. Get a little bit darker right underneath the face. Let's see. Soften this edge right here. Now let's put some pinkish orange in here. It gives me a little bit of color to put on there. See, pigment is what covers things, and even if you put white in there, a little bit of pink has white in it with red, and that will cover over any of the mistakes, and you're taking the water to soften it up too. So this will just soften to a beautiful, beautiful edge then. And down here we have a little bit darker. I'm just going to soften that by putting in pigment, and then the pigment will hide anything that I did over there that may have been looking too worked at, because now it's just pigment laying there on top. Pure pigment. That is what makes it look like pigment floating. Floating pigment is what you want it to look like, soft floating pigment. And then we've got the shadow that goes all the way to here. All right, I think that fixed that spot. With her eye here too, let's wet this again. Get that in there. And the last but not least, we're going to go in here and get the hair. A few hairs and we'll be done. Let me just take my rigger brush and I will go in here to show a little bit more of the detail of the hair. Not much, just enough to again show where it starts and where the darkest darks are. It's like detail for the hair, and not where you don't want it sticking forward. Like let's say this one right here, it'll come forward a little bit. So there, I have one. I'm going to float a few hairs there. So anything that's in front of something is where I want to look for now. I want to get the hair to come forward by showing it like here. It kind of comes from here, comes out. And just by doing a couple of them looking like they're coming forward is enough. You don't need to put every single hair in there. Just a few of these lines will indicate that this is all hair, but this is one that happens to be coming just slightly forward. And we got a bunch coming out this way, so let's do a few here. Nice and dark. Just a few, you don't need every one of them. People tend to try to copy exactly what they see in the photograph, and a lot of times that's just too hard. I mean, it's too hard to go in there and make it look exactly like whatever's happening, and you know, that's a million strands of hair that you're going to put in there, and that I don't want to do. I just want to put enough to show the main part. Oh no, I just put my finger in there. Oh, are you kidding me? I just had it perfect too. Luckily it's still a little wet, so I can just watch where your finger goes. There we go. And let's see, we got a few here. I remember I put my finger in. Remember we put a little dark in there, so I'm going to darken that up again. I don't need it to come forward, but I do need to fill that in a little bit. Now, normally, like I said, I would get a lot looser than this. I wouldn't make it so super tight. But when you want it to look like a person, a lot of times I really am struggling to make sure that it has that look exactly of that person. So it tightens you up a little bit, but that's okay. You know, sometimes you just have to do that because I'd rather have it looking like than having it loose, and that's for another time when you don't really are not looking to make it look exactly like the person, and you just want to do the character of the person. Then sometimes it's fun just to take and go crazy and make wild things with it, and even make some parts abstract of it. I want to start doing some of that too, where you're not making I learned a couple of those from Gene Peterson taught me how to do a couple of those where you're making things abstract in the face and you're bringing out a certain thing so it doesn't look like a photograph. It looks like a cool looking kind of painting that's kind of abstracted in certain parts. But that's what this is. This is actually trying to make it look just like a portrait of this young girl. And let me think, a couple more and I think we're done here, guys. A couple more strands and I think we're good. So this one right here. It's fun doing this part. This is always the detail parts and little wispy little hairs here and there. And a couple going down there. curls. And because I don't mind doing it with opaque colors, I'm going to put a couple light strands too. I'm going to take that yellow and what I made the kind of the tan colors. I'm going to take a little white and I'm going to do that too, and just make a few that are light. I could put that in with masking fluid beforehand, but little highlights in the hair, little light highlights. See, it's just like it puts it in. Right here's a couple highlights. And it's white paint. Yes, it is white paint, and a lot of people like to paint around that, but I'm just going to show you how to do a couple of them right with the white paint. It's just to enhance it, and that's what you want to do anyways, is enhancing it. So why not? And I know it's not in the picture, they don't have any right here, but I'm going to put a couple right here just to show like it's lit up right here, little highlights right there. A couple down here, and we're done. That's the fun part. I like doing a few more of these here because they're fun. And I like to rub them with my finger. This one got a little bit too carried away here, so let's put a little of this in here with a bigger brush. All right, let me take the tape off and see what we got here. And let's put one more highlight in here. We'll take pure white. I'll put a little highlight in her eye. Maybe a little highlight on her nose too, right? A little highlight right there. Right there. Maybe a little highlight on her nose. A little bit thicker on her lip. And there we have it. More of her eyebrow. All right, let's see what it looks like with the tape off, and I think we're good. So remember, when you're taping the tape off, rip from the inside out and like let it come across here and rip outwards. Don't rip upwards, don't rip towards, rip away from the paper, so that it just rips the, if it does rip the paper, it'll just rip it away. It won't rip into the painting if it does rip the paper. This is the Holbein soft tape, so it usually doesn't rip anything, so it's been really good to use the Holbein soft tape. And so here we go like this. And so there you have it, guys. There is our little image of this young girl. And if you have any questions on how to do something like this, replay it again. Actually, one more thing. I just see by your ear here, I want it a little bit darker, and then we'll be done, okay? So just see, I want to make this a little bit darker behind her ear. Wisp it down. It gives the shape of her ear, and then also makes it a little bit darker right behind her ear. And then that is it. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for watching, and subscribe to my channel if you wouldn't mind, and that way you can always see what I'm painting. It gives you a reminder, and we do a paint along every Thursday. So every Thursday we do a paint along that is fun to do. You get my newsletter, and you're all ready to paint it by Thursday. I hand it out on Tuesday, my newsletter, and then you get to have it ready by Thursday at 6:30. There's gonna be a couple of changes we're doing to the 6:30 because I'll be in Raleigh, North Carolina, and November 11th is the day, that Thursday, and so I will be doing that a little bit earlier because I got to be up in Raleigh for that show, the expo there, and so we'll probably do it a little bit earlier than normal. All right, so thanks a lot, guys, for dropping by and watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye bye. There you are.